permission this week to see Avatar: The Way of Water. And it's been quite a wait because it was one of these things that 13 years ago we saw this extraordinary motion picture, and we've been waiting for... This is the first of another 3 sequels beyond it. So there's 5 in the series as far as I'm concerned. So the next one... When is the next one, Fred? We're talking a year or 2 away, aren't we?
I think they made 2, 3, 4, and possibly 5 together.
But in terms of release, they'll drip feed it to us. It's not going to be another 13-year wait, though, which is...
No, I think it'll come out in the next 2 years, the next one.
So we saw this movie, and I've got to say that it's half an hour longer than Avatar. So it's a long sit, 3 hours and 12 minutes. That's the first question I'll put to you, Jacqui. Did that trouble you, the fact that it was the length that it was?
I don't mind a long film, Alex. I can sit for that long and be fully engaged with a film for 3 hours.
The best place to see it is where we saw it. We're incredibly privileged. 3D. Yeah, we're incredibly privileged, Greg, are we not, that we saw it at IMAX?
Not all of us saw it at IMAX.
Ah, okay. So that's the place that I would highly commend to people to go along and see it. There's no screen like it. There's no sound like it. But to me, it's the bee's knees. And we're the only city that has an IMAX in Australia. So that's the reason I'm suggesting that, not to lord it over.
Really? Sydney doesn't have an IMAX?
No, they had one a couple of years back or just before COVID, and they were meant to rebuild it, and obviously it's taken its time. So, yeah, that's where it's happening. I presume it's in the same location, Peter. I don't know.
It is on Darling Harbour.
Yeah, on Darling Harbour. Yeah, okay. So let's be... Did we all love Avatar? I mean, I thought it was an extraordinary film. You didn't, or you did?
I did not like it.
Oh.
And I didn't either.
Oh, my God. Okay. Well, let's start with you, Fred. Why did you not like the original Avatar?
It's exactly the same as the first film.
No.
Exactly
No, Fred. The original Avatar.
Oh, the original. I loved the original Avatar.
Okay. So, Peter...
I disagreed with a lot of the initial responses from a lot of critics saying, it was like Fern Gully and, Dances with Wolves. Sure, yeah, the story shares quite a bit of similarities there, but it was such a revolutionary film in terms of visuals and Cameron gives you an experience you'll never forget.
James Cameron is a masterful filmmaker. So, sorry, Peter, are you saying to me, you did not enjoy the original Avatar, Peter Krausz?
Not particularly. I always look for a good story, and the original Avatar had a fairly mundane storyline. Yes, it was visually spectacular, but I just didn't like the story much at all, and I just could not stand seeing Sigourney Weaver smoking.
Oh, well, yes, that sort of bothered me too. But overall, I thought the film was amazing. Greg, did you love it or not, the first one?
I didn't mind the first one, but I thought it was a little bit long in the tooth.
So if you thought the first one was long in the tooth and this is half an hour longer, did that extra running time bother you?
I haven't seen this one yet, Alex.
Oh, you haven't? Sorry. I'm sorry, Greg. I had no idea you hadn't. Okay,
I sent you a message saying I haven't seen it.
I didn't receive the message. You're a St Kilda supporter. You're behind the rest of us. Hey, I've got football in there. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the Saints?
No.
Oh, okay, Jacqui. That's fair enough. You don't have to. You can talk about Melbourne if you wish. Okay, so this franchise, I reckon, I mean, the whole idea is to mesmerise and excite, and I think it succeeds in doing it. And, I mean, James Cameron doesn't do anything by halves. And once again, let's see whether those of us who have seen it can agree that he's excelled with his technological wizardry and special effects. Jacqui, true?
Yes, absolutely, and not just that, but it's not just the technology; it's the input of everything like colour and movement. And by taking it to the water this time, that gives the elemental thing as a whole new story again.
Yeah. Okay. So, and Peter, you would agree that technologically, it's amazing.
Oh, look, but we expect technology in films.
I'm going to dissect this piece by piece. So, okay, we might expect it, but we've got what we expect in that regard, correct?
You cannot separate story and dialogue from spectacle, and I'm afraid the two are meshed.
I agree with Peter there.
All right. Well, look, let's just go into a little bit of detail about the story. It continues the legacy of Jake Sully, the Sam Worthington character, and in the original, he was a paraplegic Marine grieving the death of his twin brother, and he was desperately searching for a new path in life. And now he's the happily married patriarch of his family, head of the clan, and he fully inhabits his Na'vi body. And he and his wife, voiced by Zoe Saldana, they've got 4 children, a couple of boys and a couple of girls. There's one called Natayam, there's another called Loak, then there's Took, and an adopted teenage daughter called Kiri. And the Kiri is voiced by Sigourney Weaver. Now, all is sweet and life's good for more than a decade before human beings, sky people, return to this moon, which is named Pandora, in force, in large numbers. And Earth is on the precipice of being uninhabitable. And these raiders, the human beings, want to make Pandora the new home for humanity. And this time, their secret weapon, not to overlook what they bring by way of land, air and sea force and vehicles, is an elite team of soldiers who are resurrected as what are called recombinants. And recombinants, they're autonomous avatars that look like the Na'vi. They're tall, they're lean, they look identical, and they're embedded with the memories of the humans whose DNA was used to create them in the first instance. So autonomous avatars called recombinants.
Are they still avatars, though?
Yes. Yep, they're autonomous avatars. Yes, they are. And leading the fighting force is the recombinant of the soldier that locked horns with Jake in the original motion picture. And he was killed at the end of the first film. And we're talking about Colonel Miles Quaritch, played by the voice of Stephen Lang. And surprise, surprise, not, his target is Jake. Squarely is. Who eventually realises that he has to leave the rainforest on Pandora to try to keep his family safe. And that he and the family reluctantly do. They travel across the vast oceans of Pandora and they arrive at the home of another clan. And these are sea people led by a chief played by the voice of Cliff Curtis and his wife, Kate Winslet, and this is the people that thrive underwater. And it's there where Jake and his family seek and are granted refuge. They have to learn new skills to adapt to their new surroundings. So there's conflict there between the children of the two clans. There's disobedience on the part of the kids, and it's also a story about their coming of age. One that plays an important part is a human being nicknamed Spider, played by the voice of Jack Champion. He's an orphan. He's a bundle of energy. He stayed on after the last war, and he feels like a Na'vi. He's kind of this wild child. And he's close friends with Jake's children, hangs out with them all the time. Notwithstanding internal conflict, the very real spectre of Colonel Miles Quaritch and his mercenaries continues to loom large, and they will continue to hunt for Jake, and nothing is going to stop them. That's what the story is all about. Now, okay, so let's go into the story. I mean, Fred, you said to me...
I just wanted to correct you quickly, Alex.
Please.
You said Stephen Lang was voice acting and Sigourney Weaver was voice acting. It's all really them.
Well, it is. Yeah, that's true.
They're all actually acting. It's rotoscoped motion capture.
Yeah, a very, very good point, Fred. Yeah, very good point. And I suppose I was looking at them in their Na'vi form and I couldn't recognise them, so that's why I said voice of. Yes, that's quite correct. Thank you. And I could backtrack, but I can't. So, okay. Now, the story itself, Fred, you said to me, you know, it's more of the same.
Exactly the same as the first film.
Okay, well, I want to get some commentary on that. Jacqui, do you think it is or it isn't?
What was the question? Do I think what is or what isn't?
Do you think the story is identical to the first story?
Oh, no, the story is not identical, but it's very nice to have you run through that, because it's, having been 13 years since the original Avatar, I'd kind of forgotten what the story was, or the details of the story, even though I remembered the gist of the film and, more than anything, the visuals of it and my emotional reaction to it, which was a thorough enjoyment of it. But because I'd forgotten the details, I really would have liked a little bit of a catch up in this, and I don't think that this Avatar: The Way of the Water gave me that. So I was a little bit lost. I was completely lost in actually what was happening, and because the story didn't even really get even, shall we say, mildly interesting, I lost interest in that, and I just enjoyed the visuals of it in the end, I guess.
I wasn't emotionally invested in anybody in the movie.
I wasn't at all, and to me it was a whole lot of war, a whole lot of fighting and bombs and killing and guns, and then it tried to soften that with the other side of the family connections, but because I didn't understand or I hadn't remembered how those connections came about, there was a kind of a looseness to it. So I didn't really, connect with them, if you like. And I just think with 15 years and $400 million budget, they might have written it a little more interesting.
Okay, so let me just make a comment here. In November, I think it was November, they re-released the original Avatar, which I had the good fortune to see. Peter, did you see it again at the time?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Now, they did that deliberately so that people like Jacqui could basically take a second look before the new movie came out. Obviously, you didn't get...
That proves that the sequel has not picked up the threads and given it to the people who either didn't have the opportunity or couldn't be bothered going to see the first one again, doesn't it?
I don't think that proves it at all. I think that's not the correct... Again, we like you being wrong.
Do you think you could come in fresh to this after 13 years of having seen the first one and know what was going on?
Well, look, often this is not... I mean, you think about Top Gun Maverick, right? That didn't go back... that didn't go back over the...
That was a duplicate of the first Top Gun.
Top Gun was just a remake of the first one.
You didn't need to know the first.
But, okay, I use that as an example because it's 36 years, but there are other sequels where a lot of time passes and they don't recap. Now, okay, I take your point, yeah, a number would, a number wouldn't. Peter, did it trouble you that they didn't recap or give you a little bit of a starter?
No, not particularly, but if you look at the original, which supposedly professed non-violence and harmony and cultural inclusiveness, etc., it is just so boringly done in this second version, this new version of Avatar. It is so bloated.
Peter, we're struggling to hear you. You've got it's a really bad connection. It sounds like you're outside in the middle of traffic.
I shouldn't be. I should be quite clear.
You get it. You're improving. You're improving now. So we'll just
on the way to the next movie.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So okay. So Peter, just repeat what you just said, please.
Oh, I just said for the original film professed to be about harmony and pacifism and family and etc. But instead, this new version is just a rehash of the original without furthering the story at all. And in fact, it's so bloated and cliche-ridden that I really got annoyed with the film by the end of it, even though it is, with the high frame rate and the 3D, quite a spectacle to look at.
Well,
perfectly.
It's interesting that you said that because I don't agree with you. It's extraordinary how heavily invested I felt in a movie which relies upon the latest and greatest immersive CGI. I really cared deeply about the characters, unlike Jacqui, and their story arc. I mean, I thought this was an unqualified stunner. I really did. And having said that, I would agree with you that it's a familiar type story. I mean, it goes in the direction that I kind of expected it to go. But, I mean, the family, the society, the story overview, the family, the society machinations, it does follow a familiar and expected route. But I still think the realisation of it is truly masterful. And for a magnificent looking film that runs for 3 hours and 12 minutes, as I said, half an hour more than the first one, I did not find the length to be an issue. And I usually do, Greg, do I not? I usually comment upon the length of movies. And it's been an interesting week because we've seen 4 movies this week, Monday through to Thursday, and many of us have. and all of them will be nominated for Oscars. So, we haven't had the Oscar nominations, but I feel fully confident. All of them, the shortest film that I saw this week was over 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I think most of them were sustained. Only one of them wasn't. But, so again, I think Peter Krausz, you say this to us all the time, that it depends on the movie. The running time is not consequential. It depends on whether the movie's good, bad, or indifferent, correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. So, what about the enormous effort and resources, Fred, that James Cameron has put into getting the fine detail just right? You've got to admire that.
I mean, I saw an interview recently with Sam Worthington, and he said, he was being interviewed on the project only a week ago, and he said James Cameron is still working on the movie.
Sorry. Still working on the movie?
Still working on the movie a week ago. This days before it was released.
Wow.
That's how committed he is. But look, Cameron's one of the greatest directors
That's impossible.
in the world. What do you mean?
Well, how can he still be working on it a week ago?
Well, it's digital. It's not. The film is not shot on film.
Yeah,
you
but it's still
make
got to be.
last-minute adjustments before it's released. Absolutely.
Well, maybe he could have written in something more interesting in the storyline then, in the narrative.
I totally agree with you, Jacqui.
I think they put that much effort and time and money into one aspect of it and not balance that out by keeping us, mentally entertained.
If you look at Cameron's work in the past, his films were such a jump over their predecessors. Look at Aliens, which was an enormous jump above Alien, and then Terminator 2, enormous jump above Terminator 1. His work is incredibly revolutionary in all aspects. But I just thought the first thing that crossed my mind when I finished watching Avatar 2 was, this is what we've waited 13 years for?
He's trying to spread it over the 4 sequels then. So he's not trying to, give us too much in the second one because so many more are coming. Perhaps that's it.
Well, I joked that with the Kacha twins, that the third film is probably going to be set in the snow, and the fourth film is going to be set in space. Because that's all that he seems to be doing with this to differentiate the movies between one another. Just changing the location and the scenery.
The environment that was wonderful. The water environment really made it stand out. We'll remember it for that, really.
Visually, the film was astounding, but I was still very disappointed because the story for me is the most important. Always has been, always will be.
But the characters are readily relatable. I mean, there's love.
They're not, Alex. I spent half the film trying to work out who was who.
Okay, I found them very easily relatable. You're talking about love, family, you're talking about friendship, the issue of trust, yearning, betrayal is there, anger, hatred. They're the dominant.
All of that was in the first film as well.
Yeah, but hang on. How many films? Let's be honest. Most films deal with these human emotions, and
so does The Fabelmans, and you hated it.
No, hang on. We're not allowed to talk about The Fabelmans, so we will not talk about The Fabelmans.
Right.
But look, I thought this was. I mean, Jake continues to play a pivotal role, including squaring off with the Miles Quaritch character. But much of the focus in this movie is on his second son and his adopted daughter. That was not the focus of the first one, Fred. No. I mean, you answer that.
Well, if you look at the parallels between both films, right? I don't want to spoil anything to your listeners.
No, please don't.
But okay, here are the similarities in an abstract way.
Okay.
Sam Worthington is the main character in the first film.
Yes.
And you see him trying to fit in with the Na'vi even after they find out that he's an avatar.
Mm-hmm.
In the second movie, the Na'vi are now trying to fit in with this other tribe. And so both films, you see the character, the main character, whether it be just Sam Worthington or in the second film his family, they're trying to prove themselves to these other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go through the same trials and the same tribulations and the same obstacles and the same emotional roller coasters to try and fit in. And once they fit in, they work together to defeat their common foe.
Yeah,
the exact same thing happens in both.
I suppose that for those people who want it, if we look at this on a human level, for those people who don't fit in for whatever reason or don't feel they're part of society or outsiders and whatever, that resonates often for people throughout their lives. So I reckon that's relatable. I understand
it's relatable, but how many times can you do it to death?
All right. So what would you have liked to see? I mean, and again, you're not James Cameron, but what visionary way would you like?
If I was, I actually thought about this in great depth. If I was him, I would have focused the entire second movie on, now the humans have left our planet. Now we are here alone, picking up, from the damage that was caused by that invasion. Now let's explore the relationships, not just between the Na'vi, but the different tribes that live on Pandora.
Okay, but guess what you would have had? You would have had conflict then, Fred.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. Even among the same species, Alex, there is conflict.
Yes, of course there is, and there is. Of course, if you think about the planet that we're on, there is. But sorry. So in the first one, you'd have conflict between humans and the Na'vi, and in the second one, you'd have internal conflict on this moon planet. So
yes, and that's what would have made the third film so interesting, is that in the second movie, there was conflict between the tribes, and then in the third film, 15, 20 years later, when the humans return, these tribes have to, throw away their differences and come together to defeat their common foe.
Yeah, but again, all of this has been done before. None of what you've told me is in any way original. I'm sorry, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I mean all of that we've seen this in other movies, and whether they do it one way or the other,
I like Fred's narrative there. I think Fred's got it. I think Fred's nailed it. Good on you, Fred. Could you send that to him?
No, but what I mean is, we want to know more about Pandora. And I don't feel like in the first film we really got to know the planet and all the creatures and the species that exist on it. I thought it was a missed opportunity for Cameron to explore the planet, so we got to know it better before the third film has this epic battle.
All right. Now, Peter Krausz, you've heard what Fred's rewrite of Avatar 2. What would you like to have seen? Because you've also been critical.
Well, I'd be more interested in what happened to that precious mineral that was so important.
Yeah.
That seems to have unobtainium. That seems to have disappeared.
What a stupid name.
Oh, ridiculous. And I agree with you, Fred. I would have liked more of that storyline to be developed in terms of the tribes. I mean, this film revels in violence and in bloodshed and in conflict when it's supposed to be, originally, was supposed to be set up as a way of dealing with conflict and dealing with pacifism and harmony. And so this has turned into a Marvel film.
Yeah. Well, how is unobtainium better than vibrate? Is it vibratium or vibranium or?
It's just a MacGuffin, Alex. It's just a MacGuffin.
It's just a MacGuffin, exactly. Which film was this in, Peter, that we saw recently with vibranium?
Wakanda. Black Panther.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that, Greg?
Black Panther.
Black Panther, exactly. So, these names, maybe they can be a little bit more inventive about it. So, I mean, I think that I'm the only one who thought this was an excellent sequel. Am I correct, Jacqui?
No, many people like it.
No, I'm talking about amongst us.
Oh, amongst us,
yeah, amongst us. I mean, none of you...
We need to give our scores now, because if we're going to do our end-of-year best...
Yeah, we are there, Jacqui, so that's fine. I reckon it builds on the plaudits rightfully afforded to Avatar 13 years ago. I'll give my score last. We'll go from tallest to shortest, so we'll start off with you, Fred.
Look, if this film had come out 3, 4, 5 years after the first film, I think I would have given it a higher score. But we've waited 13 years for something very special, and he didn't deliver. So on that basis, I'd give it a 6.5.
Peter Krausz.
It is a spectacle to look at. It really is a technical marvel, but it is a washout in terms of the story. It's very disappointing, cliche-ridden. I can just barely give it 5 out of 10.
Oh, my golly.
Wow. Okay.
That's extremely harsh. Jacqui, Hammerton?
I'm going to agree with everything Peter and Fred said, so that 3 of us are right. However, I'm feeling a little more generous at this time of year, and I did enjoy myself. I didn't have a problem for 3 hours, so I'm giving it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Well, it's all right. All 3 of you can be wrong. You're dismissed now from reviewing.
That's a good point from Jacqui, by the way. I wasn't bored at all throughout the film. I was not bored.
Peter, were you bored?
I probably won't see it again anytime soon.
Peter, were you bored?
I was, by the time it got to the halfway stage, I was bored. I was hoping for something different, unusual, different from the cliches that I was being given. So, yes, I was looking at my watch about the 2-hour mark.
Wow, okay. I'm giving it an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. I thought it was a terrific sequel. Really enjoyed it. And all of you are excused, as I've said. Folks, you're on JAir 88 FM, and you're listening to Fred Levitt. Fred